has spent the last 5 years guiding and teaching outdoor education in Colorado, Wyoming, and Idaho, in addition to being an AIARE instructor. Emma is very passionate about creating inclusive communities in the backcountry, and we're very excited to have her share her expertise as an inclusive educator with us this evening. So I will turn it over to Emma. Thank you for joining us this evening, Emma.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. And thank you all for being here. I know that middle of the week is a hard time to fit everything in, and I just finished throwing my dinner together, so I understand. A good chunk of this, well, not a good chunk, probably half of this is going to be me talking, and then the other half I want to like facilitate some conversations. So hopefully we can please feel free to cook, and then I'll let you know when we like want a little bit more engagement, because I think a lot of this topic, I'm here to like help facilitate us brainstorming and discussing. I have no magic bullets to how we make this industry more inclusive. So let's see, I'm gonna start off and let's see, share my screen. Also really appreciate your patience as I navigate technology, which is not my strong suit. Okay. I would love if we can I'll do some brief introductions in a second, but first I'm gonna kind of run through my goals and an outline of this course. So, hold on, sorry. I wanted this, I have lots of notes and they're being hidden. Here we go. Okay, so my goal of this course is to basically give us some space to talk about what microaggressions are, how those show up, and how we as educators can like avoid making these. One like premise that we're working on throughout this discussion is that the avalanche industry has been built mostly by white men and has historically really benefited that same population. My goal is to help us determine ways to make this industry more accessible, and like by doing that, welcome more people of varied backgrounds and identities. I'm sure this is like a huge topic. We could have webinars for days on this. So I want to like really pinpoint this down to microaggressions and what we can do to be aware of those. One other like additional premise that I want to like work on is that like we don't have the time, resources, or like intention to change really how our students are communicating in regards to microaggression, but we do have the like time, hopefully time and intention to change how we're doing that. So this is like really focused on us as instructors versus like changing the entire avalanche industry. Maybe we'll get there someday. Okay, so this is a brief outline, especially because there's so few of us. I really think that we can make this 60 minutes or less. I know we're all very busy people. And I don't want to listen to myself talk for much more than that. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about like what are microaggressions? How do we define these? Then we as a collective are going to like brainstorm various ways these show up on AIARE courses. Then a little bit of an activity of like thinking about language that we can use to minimize this and kind of increasing our awareness of where our blind spots might be. And then lastly, I hope to create a safe space where we can discuss A, related experiences, and B, like make a plan to implement this when we're out in the field. Okay, so here's like a brief outline of introductions. Liz already did a great introduction for me, but my name's Emma. I use she, her pronouns. I live in Breckenridge, so zooming in from there. And I just took my AIARE ITC last winter, which I'm really excited about. I have like worked in the ski guide world previous to that, and honestly found it like pretty hard to exist there as like a young queer woman, and didn't really, I mean, in a lot of ways I felt very like included, and then in some ways I felt like that it was not a place where I like saw myself in many other people, especially mentors out there. So my goal in doing this is to like hopefully open up conversations and at least make some small impact in this industry. When Liz asked me to do this, I was like, oh no, I don't know if I know enough to like do this, but I think like, so I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm not an expert, but I believe that like this is a really important conversation to have, and I have the tools from like a background more in the education world to help us learn together and to like hopefully have some like inspiring conversations where we can like bring this forward. So let's see, I would love if you all can introduce yourself, go through 4 bullet points. I'm going to name someone to go first, and then after each person goes, if you can just name the next person so we don't have the like awkward Zoom lag. So let's see.
And
Sarah.
then could I interrupt just for 1 minute before jumping in? On my screen, the first like 8 of your screen is cut off. Okay, I'm seeing other nods too. So can you slide that box? Oh,
is that looking better?
That looks great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. You all. I know it's a small group, but I'm really excited to get to like talk this all out with you all. I think hopefully we learned some good things from what I have to say, and then we can all brainstorm some of these things. Like Monique, I think you brought up some really valuable questions that we can all share some thoughts and experiences with. Liz, do you want to share anything, or are we good to go on? Okay, awesome. Cool. Sweet. I wanted to talk a little bit about norms. Basic idea here is that I think for some people, having conversations around identity can be really hard and uncomfortable. And that's probably good. It probably means they're having the right conversations. And I want to list some norms and also just like encourage ourselves to like give yourself some space to like feel whatever reaction that might be, and then like still engage with the content. Also, like maybe you don't agree with everything I'm saying. That is totally fine. And if you don't feel that way, like just please share with me in like a kind and respectful way. So a couple of norms I would really love, and I also really want you all to eat dinner and cook dinner. So, but in between dinner, would really love if we can all work really hard to engage. I know that we've all been teaching on Zoom for the last too long, and the more engagement we have, I think the more benefits we'll get out of this. Similar, like a safe space, right? Like I want this to be a space where we can like reflect and think about things that have happened to maybe microaggressions we've perpetuated or like had perpetuated against us. Some general ideas of the safe space is like, let's just make sure that things that are shared in here that feel sensitive, like don't leave our little Zoom community. Similarly, I think like bringing some vulnerability into these discussions is a really good way to like actually get talking about the real things that we like probably should be talking about. Lean into discomfort, tough on ideas, not the people who have stated those ideas, right? And then my other like quick thing is I think for some folks, and sometimes me included, like there's a lot of language around like diversity, equity, inclusion stuff that's changing. And I think sometimes that feels really hard to engage with because we don't know what the right words are or how to say this in the most politically correct idea. And I just like want to address that and say like, it's okay, as long as we're making an effort, that's really important. And if we like are saying things that like maybe aren't totally okay, like let's try to call in, not out, and accept that with a growth mindset. So there's are just some norms that I wanted to state, and now we're going to dive into the, like kind of the deep dark part of it. Okay, microaggressions. I'm going to start out with this Maya Angelou quote. Words are things. I'm convinced. You must be careful about the words you use and the words that are allowed to be used in your house. Words are things. We must be careful about calling people out on their names, using racial pejoratives and sexual pejoratives and all that ignorance. Don't do that. Someday we'll be able to measure the power of words. I think there are things, I think they get on your walls, they get in your wallpaper, they get in your rug, in your upholstery, in your clothes, and finally into you. And I think this quote does a really good job of illustrating like the power that our words can have and the importance of being thoughtful about how we are communicating. Because they do affect, like, how people talk to us affects how we feel in that space. So this is going to be like our working definition of microaggressions for the course. Microaggressions are defined as the everyday, subtle, intentional, and oftentimes unintentional interactions or behaviors that communicate some sort of bias towards historically marginalized groups. The difference between microaggressions and overt discrimination or macroaggressions is that people who commit microaggressions might not even be aware of them. And I think there's like two really important parts to this that we're kind of like hopefully going to like dive in more. And that's like, microaggressions are oftentimes unintentional, and people who commit them might not even be aware that they're committing them. So this kind of ties back into our goal of like trying to just like increase our awareness of there's like so many common words and phrases out there in the ski industry that like the more you think about it, the more you're like, wow, I can't believe we say that really commonly. So this is going to be like our working definition of microaggressions, and I want to dive into like a few more details, and then we can talk about some more examples. Okay, so what are microaggressions? What's the difference between mean language and microaggressions? And the idea here is that like mean language generally hurts everyone. Microaggressions, going back to this, they are targeted towards some historically marginalized group, right? There's like some bias in how these are turned. And then like macro versus microaggressions. What is the difference? Is there a line? I don't know if there's a line. I was just trying to think of like a good way to explain this, and I think like a little anecdote from my life. Right now I'm working in a public middle school, and I identify as queer, and my students go around calling each other gay, like as like intentional mean all of the freaking time. And that feels like a macroaggression to me. I'm like, you're using my identity as like a way to put someone down. I think like a microaggression, I just taught a course last weekend, and one of the participants came up to me and asked what my boyfriend did. And I was like just because I like am a female does not necessarily mean that I am dating a man. And I think that kind of helps like delineate a little bit maybe how we see like macroaggressions of like students calling each other gay, like that's like not okay. And then these little microaggressions, like that is such a casual comment and like is normally totally okay. And when I hear it over and over and over again, it just reminds me that like, I don't know if I feel totally comfortable being like 100% myself in this place. And I think that kind of leads nicely into like the idea that like micro doesn't mean that it can't have big impact. There's been a lot of research done on the impact of microaggression, and they have like there's like, I looked at this like meta-analysis of a lot of different research specifically on the impact, and it being exposed to microaggressions repeatedly can lead to increase in depression, anxiety, other physical conditions such as diabetes. So this is like, you know, obviously there's a big relationship between our mental and physical health, and microaggressions are a huge part of both of those things. And then quick little thing about implicit bias, right? So implicit bias is the idea that we have attitudes or like associated stereotypes towards certain groups of people without our knowledge. We've all been like socialized in various communities, and we have these like implicit or unknown biases. And oftentimes that's where we see microaggressions happening. And that goes back to this part of like not knowing or being unaware that microaggressions happen. Okay, so we're gonna like walk through this quick table and like give some examples. This is not rocket science. I think it's maybe helpful to like outline it a little bit. And I just broke this into 3 different factors of identity, and we're going to talk a little bit more about identity later. But under like gender, like a common term that we hear thrown around all the time is "hey guys," or "let's go do this guys." I've personally been working really hard to try to get that out of my vocabulary, and oh my gosh, it feels really challenging. But some like better options that we can use are team, folks, y'all. The middle schoolers I work with right now give me so much crap for calling them team all the time. But I think like it is like maybe a better option than guys. Another like thing related to gender, right, is like it takes balls to do that, implying that like we need certain genitalia to do brave things. That was really brave. Anything down that line that maybe isn't talking about specific genitalia is like another great option instead of that. The next little bit of like identity I want to talk about is socioeconomic status / elitism, because I think those go hand in hand and are also super common in our like ski industry. So the terms like Jerry and Gapers are such a good way to put down anyone who is learning this sport. And we all learned how to ski sometime. I learned how to ski when I was like 19, so I definitely like remember that phase. And I think like just being really thoughtful about how we are using these terms to exclude versus include people. Maybe instead we use folks that are learning to ski or ride, etc. And then another one, I find myself doing this a lot, and it's something I'm personally really working on, but commenting on like sweet gear, or like, how do you like that backpack? Or like, oh, I really want that pair of skis. And I think this like is a really easy thing to connect on. We all think a lot about gear, especially when we like do it for work. But it also can like really, like, I think it places a lot of power on people who have really nice gear, and it can really exclude folks who like maybe just don't, are trying their hardest to be in this industry and don't have the snazziest tech bindings out there. And I think a better option is like, let's just choose to connect on more meaningful things than that. And obviously a big part of our job is talking about gear. And I think we can do that while still holding space to like try to connect with people not on the gear that they own. Racism. Some like common terms, I think I hear this all the time in a ski town, like Black people don't ski. That is such a good way to invalidate any person, like BIPOC experience skiing. And then similarly, obviously I'm a white woman and this is what I've heard from people, but comments such as like, where are you really from, etc. Nobody owes us an explanation of their heritage, and maybe we can connect over like where they grew up or where they live now, but being really thoughtful about how we use that term. So that's like a handful of microaggressions. I would honestly, I don't know if it's worth going into breakout rooms because there's so few of us. But let's see, let's do it together. Hopefully we can all share. But I would love to like, just like share any, if you would like to share any experiences you've had in the ski industry, experiences with microaggressions, maybe that's like perpetuating them or having them perpetuated against you. And then I think most importantly, I'm really excited about thinking about how this shows up on our AIARE courses, like what part of an AIARE course might we see this most often, etc. Yeah, so if you all feel comfortable sharing, I would love to hear, and I'm gonna write them down. This part, big notes here, obviously including people and making people feel like their voices really matter and that they can speak openly in these parts are a huge part of the like teamwork section of the AIARE framework. I work a lot for Knowles and various other like outdoor ed places where we like, you know, teach leadership except in 30 days. And so much of our curriculum is around how to like talk about these things and how to make people with like various identities feel comfortable sharing and voicing opinions in a space where like maybe they don't see themselves represented that often. I want to give a big plug here. Last year, another AIARE instructor, Aiden Goldie, gave a really good short talk for an AAA seminar. And his big push was like diversity of lived experiences will promote better decision making in the backcountry. So if we can like make courses where people feel comfortable and included, we will then be able to make better decisions and in the end come out of our wonderful backcountry experiences safer. Great. Moving on efficiently from this. Quick note on identity. I just wanted to share this because we're about to like dive a little bit deeper into this. We all have so many different things that make up our identity. These might be like a few of them, and then there's hundreds of other things. Based on differences in each of our identities, we like experience either privilege or oppression. We are going to focus on a handful of like social identities, which are listed here. And of these, we'll focus on a few more specific ones. But I just wanted to like put that big overview there. So what I would love to do next is I'm going to share this Google Doc with you all. And if we can all just like, I'll try to keep it concise because I know we can dive down some deep rabbit holes. But kind of building off this chart that I shared earlier of like, here are some things that we say really commonly. What are other things we can say instead of that? Of trying to like increase that awareness. So at least we're not making people feel excluded without our knowledge. And there's 4 different things. Originally, I thought there's gonna be a lot more people. So I was like, oh, we can go into breakout rooms. But seeing as there's not that many of us, maybe we can like divide into 2 breakout rooms, Liz, if that sounds good. And choose this. And then up here, I just want to highlight some really cool resources. You will all have access to this doc to look at afterwards. We're like really narrowing in on this idea of microaggressions. I think we like talked about a lot of things, and I'm going to bring us back into this. I would love to continue this broader conversations at a future point. But these are just some like really cool resources that I've used throughout my career as an educator. And this is Language Values at Bank Street, which is just an elementary school in New York City. But they have some like really helpful ideas of like, these are really common terms. What else could we say? There's a whole list of them here. It would probably take a couple hours to read through everything, so choose wisely. But my goal is to give us, maybe we take 4 minutes and try to like build on these lists. So we have gendered microaggressions, socioeconomic status / elitist microaggressions. I think we could definitely talk about snowboarding in there too. Racist microaggressions, and then sexual orientation microaggressions. My goal here is to not by any means police anyone's language, but just to help us like increase that awareness. And as always, like, I mean, you can take or leave this, take it or leave it.